All right, welcome back. Back with another week review, this time for Southeast Asia because it is Saturday. If you weren't aware, I have a specific day of the week assigned to each review. Saturday is Southeast Asia. I believe tomorrow is Eastern Europe, and then after that, South America, and yada, yada, yada. But regardless, going over some matches, more so in the upper division than the lower division this time. Of course, the lower division played I'd say the first half of their week, of week 4 before the Christmas break, whereas the upper division had not started yet. So starting off, I'm going to be going over some matches, then the standings, and then taking a look at some stats, starting off in the upper division and then going down to the lower division as I usually do. All right, starting up January 5th, which was the first day that we had the DPC starting up again for every region except China. China started a little bit earlier, which makes sense because they don't have that New Year holiday that everyone else has. They have a different one. So starting off on January 5th, OB.Neon takes a series over T1. T1 in this one looked really good in game 1, looked dominant in game 1 as they had to this point in the DPC, but then things kind of slipped a little bit, and OB.Neon finally finding their stride a little bit. I know I had a lot of people talking about it in my power rankings comment section, talking about how OB.Neon was maybe a little bit too low, how they were playing pretty well outside of the DPC, they just hadn't really found their footing yet, and that is true. However, my power rankings are DPC related, and because they were having a pretty miserable time, I couldn't exactly justify having them very highly rated, but this is definitely a fantastic start. Now, they are still bottom 2, they are still quite likely to get relegated unless they manage to pick up a lot of wins from here, but this is a good place to start. Beating one of the best teams in the region is definitely a good place to start, especially after bouncing back after losing game 1 and coming back and winning the next 2. All around fantastic series for OB.Neon, and for T1, you know, they're still set up to make it to the major as long as they keep the pace that they've set so far, but you have to think that this is a little bit worrisome for them. Later that day, we had SMG taking down Execration. SMG just further cementing themselves as one of the more consistent teams in this region. Execration got off to a pretty solid start, but they did notably have 2 of their wins up against 2 of the weaker teams in the region, which, like I mentioned, were OB.Neon and TNC, but OB.Neon now has seemed to found their stride a little bit. Again, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the season for OB.Neon, but yeah, good place to start for them. January 6th, we had Fnatic taking down Motivate 2-1. 2 teams that are kind of fighting for a spot in that top 3 in this division, trying to avoid relegation as well. 2 teams that aren't exactly at the top, but aren't exactly at the bottom. And it ended up being a pretty entertaining series. Fnatic takes it 2-1 all around. Great series to watch. And Fnatic starting to pull themselves ahead, trying to keep themselves in the race, and Motivate. It has been a real fall from grace for them, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we get into our last day of DPC Dota earlier today, or at least for my time. We had Boom taking down TNC Predator 2-0. I think we all saw this coming, given how Boom has been playing so extremely well and TNC has not. However, we could have said the same thing about T1 and OB.Neon earlier on in the week. And then finally, T1 taking down Motivate. So T1 gets that little bit of a bounce back. This was a very, very close series. Motivate put up a hell of a good fight, but they do eventually drop it. They aren't able to close out the series. They did have their moments. Again, this wasn't a one-sided series by any means. Motivate showing why they should be considered one of the better teams in this region. But again, a win slips away from them, and they just aren't able to secure it. And because of that, they take a pretty big dip in the standings. So starting off, our top 2 teams stay in the same position that they were in last week, those being Boom and T1. Boom goes 1-0 on the week to be 5-0 so far, very impressive start. T1 goes 1-1 on the week, so they do drop 1 series, but that doesn't seem to hinder their process so far as they are 3-1. In second place, we have SMG and Fnatic moving up 1 spot each. They are now 3-2. Dropping down 2 spots from third place, we have Execration in 5th place. Again, they kind of got themselves ahead with a good start playing against some of the weaker teams in the division, but now that they're having to play against some other teams in this division that are very good. And like I said before, the Southeast Asian division is very, very competitive and very, very close. They are starting to shake down a little bit. At least that's kind of what it's looking like. They had a little bit of a shakedown. We'll see how it goes next week if they're able to bounce back. But for now, they dropped down to 5th place. In 6th, we have Motivate also dropping down 2 spots. And if you guys remember correctly, after week 1, Motivate was 2-0. And before the season even started, I really thought Motivate was going to be one of the best teams that were looking good in outside tournaments leading up to the DPC. And they got off to a hell of a good start. But since then, they have lost 4 straight series. It has gone from bad to worse for Motivate Gaming, and they are seeing their dreams of making it to the first major pretty much non-existent at this point. They do need to win their next series to avoid relegation, just in case any of the lower tier teams force some sort of tiebreaker, but they should be safe. But yeah, Motivate not going to be attending the first major. At 7th spot, staying in the same spot as last week, we have OB.Neon, and they do stay in the same spot, but they do manage to go 1-0, so they get that one extra win. And in last place, just like last week, TNC Predator still sits winless, 0-5 so far. So not a whole lot of movement, just some teams moving slightly up and a few teams moving slightly down in the middle part of the standings. But overall, top 2 teams, bottom 2 teams, all the same. I'm really excited to see how this last about a week and a half of Dota we have left for Southeast Asia ends up going, because that 3rd spot could really go to anyone. We could even see T1 dropping out of it. They've only got 3 wins so far. They do have 3 more series to play. Who knows? I've seen weirder. Moving on now to stats. There have been a total of 42 matches played in the DPC in Southeast Asia's upper division. 29 of those games have been played on Radiant and have been wins, 13 of which have been dire wins. For first and last pick, it is that same ratio, 29 for first pick, 13 for last pick. For top heroes, Pangolier just looking better and better. He was on this list last week as well. He is 10-2 to this point. Very impressive hero that I'm very surprised. Like, I think I mentioned this in my last video. Very surprised that we haven't been seeing him nearly as often in some other regions. We then have Templar Assassin, who is 6-1, and Batrider, 4-0 so far. Not a very common hero. I think we've been seeing it quite a bit in North America, but other than that, not a whole lot of Batrider anywhere else, but it's been doing pretty well in Southeast Asia. Now, that is only 4 games out of 42, so it's not like it's a very large sample size or anything, but still, 4-0. For worst heroes, we have Storm Spirit 0-4, Dawnbreaker 0-4 as well. We've been seeing Dawnbreaker quite a lot in a bunch of different regions, and I don't think it's been having the best success. And then Lifestealer 1-5. For most banned, we have IO with 36. We have Beast. Whoops, I wrote Beast Coast. We have Beastmaster with 27, and Invoker with 27 as well. That's a little funny there. For top GPM teams, we have T1 leading the way with 2339. For second place, we have Fnatic with 2300 and Motivate with 2205. So Motivate are 2-4 so far. They're near the bottom half of the standings, but they're still putting up really good numbers. Again, their series have been very close. They just aren't able to secure the wins. A lot of the time they lose in 3 games. So they tie it up or they start strong and they just aren't able to close it out from there, which is something that they'll definitely have to work on, especially if they stay together as a team for the upcoming tour. I think this is definitely just them underperforming, as I think we all knew just how strong this team should have been coming into the DPC, especially with how strong they started off. Again, for top XPM, we have T1 leading the way once again with 2960, Boom with 2742, and Fnatic with 2692. And for top KDA, Boom leads the way with 5.66, T1 with 5.05, and Fnatic with 3.48. Now finally looking at some top players, Raven leads the way with 665 GPM. Then we have Nando with 650 and Palos with 643. For top XPM, we have Carl with 770, 23 Savage with 714, and Palos with 783. So Palos showing up on both lists there. He's been having a hell of a season so far, even though his team has not been having a very good time at all. And that's, again, bringing it back to OB.Neon. They've not exactly been doing so well, but they've got the individual player skill there. For top KDA, we have Yopaj leading the way with 8.81. He's been having a hell of a season so far. 23 Savage, who has also been having a very good time. I've been really impressed with 23 Savage, which is really saying something because the bar was already so high for him, but watching him is still fantastic with 7.96, and then FBZ with 7.17. So yeah, things are starting to settle a little bit. Again, not a whole lot of movement in the standings from last week. So teams are starting to kind of settle into their final placements here. Some teams only have 1 series remaining, like Motivate, who only has 1 series left. It's going to be crucial for them to win that last series if they want to avoid getting relegated. And yeah, I'm really interested. Again, I already mentioned I'm really excited to see who ends up making it to the first major from Southeast Asia, as Boom is looking like the first contender. But other than that, it's pretty wide open. We have the following 5 teams all within 1 win of each other. Now, there is a little bit of fluctuation in how many matches each of those teams have played. For example, T1 and Execration have only played 4 series so far. But yeah. Again, this is kind of shaping up to be exactly what I was hoping it would be before the season started. A very close, competitive region that is totally unpredictable, and I love it. Now moving on to the lower division. This should go by a little bit quicker. A lot of the stats and standings in general are going to be the same from last week, as there have only been 3 matches, again, since the first half of week 4 was played back before the Christmas break for the lower division of Southeast Asia. Starting off on January 6th, we had Ragdoll taking on Talon, and they take them down 2-0. Very impressive. Ragdoll has been looking like one of the best teams in here. And again, Ragdoll beat Talon in those open qualifiers the first time. Talon came in through the second open qualifiers, and it's because they lost to Ragdoll in that first one. And Ragdoll has been proving to themselves that they 100% deserve to be there, and they, in fact, might end up getting into that upper division, which would be really, really cool to see. But there are some other teams that are holding that company with them, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Following that, we had 496 getting their first win, starting off the new year strong by taking down Lil Gun 2-0. A very impressive win, as Lil Gun has been one of the better teams in this lower division so far, whereas 496 has had a pretty miserable start up to this point. And then finally, on January 8th, Talon finally gets themselves a win in the new year. They take down Interactive Philippines 2-0. Which isn't exactly saying anything. I mean, Interactive Philippines have been having a pretty tough time of it so far. Looking at the standings now, leading the way in first place, staying there from last week, we have Enigma and Polaris, who are 4-0 each. Joining them in first place, not because they weren't doing as well, but just because they hadn't played as many matches, is Ragdoll. They are 4-0 as well. So we have 3 teams tied for 4-0 so far. They have yet to play against each other, which is super exciting. As we get closer to the end of the season, we're going to be seeing these teams play against one another, and it's going to be really, really cool to see which two of these 3 teams makes it to the upper division. Because again, only 2 of these guys make it. And that's not to say that some of the other teams couldn't make it. I mean, Lil Gun is still within reach, but it's pretty unlikely at this point that anyone past Lil Gun is making it to the upper division, which is pretty unfortunate, especially for Talon, who everyone was expecting would completely blow this division out of the water. I mean, they have the names to back it up, and when we get into the stats, we'll see that they've got the individual player skill to back it up as well. But the results have really just not been there. We then have in 4th place Lil Gun, staying in the same position from last week. Same thing for Talon. They go 1-1 in the week. Again, they start off by losing to Ragdoll, but then they beat Interactive Philippines, so they find themselves at 5th place at 2-3. 496 moves up 1 spot to be in 6th place, tied with Army Geniuses at a 1-4 record. And then Interactive Philippines move down to the definitive last place in the division. They are now 0-5. Again, it's not guaranteed that they're eliminated yet. I don't think anyone in any region is guaranteed elimination yet, or guaranteed a major spot, except maybe Liquid in the Western European region, since 4 teams make it from there. But yeah, it's looking pretty unlikely so far for Interactive Philippines. Looking at the top heroes now, looking at some stats and stuff. There have been 45 matches played in total in Southeast Asia's lower division. 25 of those have been Radiant wins, 20 of them Dire wins. So a little bit more even this time around, as opposed to the upper division where Radiant and first pick were much more heavily favored. For first and last pick actually takes it just barely with a 22-23 score. For top heroes, we have Kunkka, who is 12-2. We've been seeing Kunkka pretty much everywhere, fits the meta very well, and being picked 14 times out of 45 matches is pretty impressive. Just under a third of the matches he is present, and he's only lost 2 of them, so been a pretty impressive hero so far. We also have Lion, who's 8-3, and Enchantress, who is 4-0. For worst heroes, we have Razor, 1-5. We have Timbersaw, 2-7, and we have Queen of Pain, 3-9. So right there, those are 3 heroes, or at least the Razor and the Queen of Pain are 2 of the most popular and strongest heroes of the patch, at least in the overall scheme of pretty much every region, every division, and yet not been having a lot of success in Southeast Asia's lower division. For most banned, we have Weaver with 32, Bane with 24, and Monkey King with 23. For top GPM, Enigma leads the way with 2490. We then have Polaris with 2402 and Ragdoll with 2368. So all those teams very closely together. And again, these are all the teams that so far are undefeated. We have the exact same teams in the exact same order for top XPM. Enigma with 3016. Polaris with 2882 and Ragdoll with 2860. And for top KDA, Ragdoll leads the way with 5.41. Talon then shows up, which is a little surprising because again, they've got some pretty good stats, but they're just not getting the wins that they need. But when they do get those wins, they absolutely crush, just like earlier today when they played against Interactive Philippines. They dominated. And then we have Enigma right behind them with 4.29. For top players, GPM Gabby leads the way. 712. We then have VT Faded from Ragdoll with 691, and then Natsumi with 657. Him from Polaris. We then have top XPM Gabby leading the way once again with 722, Alacrity from Team Enigma with 717, and then we have Natsumi again showing up with 713. And then finally for top KDA, In Your Dream from Enigma, who has been very impressive this season so far. He leads the way with a 9.0 KDA. We then have Ajit with 8.19, and then VT Faded with 7.45. So yeah. Again, I am super excited for these next couple, about a week and a half of matches for Southeast Asia's lower division. Southeast Asia in general, this division has been very, very entertaining to watch. And I'm just so excited for these top three teams to play against each other, because if they do manage to have some sort of like rock, paper, scissors scenario where like, say Enigma beats Polaris, Polaris beats Ragdoll, and Ragdoll beats Enigma, or in any order like that, where one team beats the other and loses to the next, we could have a pretty wicked tiebreaker for who ends up getting pushed up to the upper division, which I think is pretty fantastic. So, yeah, all around, been super satisfied and excited watching this region. And if you're a fan of this region, or if you're not a fan of this region, I highly encourage checking it out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my week review. Remember, every single Saturday I have Southeast Asia. Tomorrow is Eastern Europe once those matches are finished. And if you don't want to miss it, feel free to subscribe, join the Discord, all that fun stuff. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.